like, put a gun to my mom's head and said, play this organ riff or your mom dies, I would be like, I'm trying my best, Mom, and sorry. You know? Honestly, I mean, it might sound kind of shitty, but like, I'm not really into like most music from, at least most metal from today. Like, I find that as I get older, of course, I still want to find new bands and listen to more music or whatever, but I just tend to go backwards, you know what I mean? Like, in the early 90s, it was all, you know, for me, it was about Terrorizer and Impetigo and Carnage and Carcass and Bolt Thrower and all these bands and Obituary, and all the bands are kind of happening then. And then after the death metal scene kind of changed in like 94, 95, I kind of rediscovered the thrash stuff that I grew up on, like, you know, Sodom and Creator, and then I dug a little bit deeper for your like Protector and Assassin and all these sort of more random bands. And then from there, kind of went to like new wave of British heavy metal, like just steadily slipping backwards, you know. And you know, now, I mean, in terms of like heavy music or whatever, I'd be much more likely to be listening to like UFO or like Thin Lizzy or something. I'm very concept oriented, and the concept that I have of death metal is pretty strict, and it's rooted in like that first generation from like, you know, Possessed and Celtic Frost through to like Death and Master and Repulsion and those kind of bands, and that's where I like to stay. And to me, I think Exhumed is very technical and modern sounding compared to like Master and Insanity,
right?
More the death metal that I'm into, and even like, you know, newer bands, I tend to be more into like the more primitive sounding stuff or whatever. So to me, I'm like, Exhumed is kind of fancy. But then I hear, you know, modern bands, I'm like, wow, we are still pretty crude or whatever. And it's also just, as a guitar player, I mean, I do try to get better and, you know, improve my playing, but I mean, I just don't think like that. I couldn't play an origin riff if I tried. If somebody like put a gun to my mom's head and said, play this origin riff or your mom dies, I would be like, I'm trying my best, Mom, and sorry. You know, it's just, that's just not my style or whatever. And, you know, all the guys in the band, that's the kind of death metal that we all have in common. Mike, our drummer, is, you know, been involved with Deeds of Flesh and the whole unique leader scene and stuff, which is much more tech oriented. And it's good because he brings like a sort of athleticism to his playing that's really cool for the band. But aside from that, you know, our other guitar player, Bud, I mean, he listens to mostly country, so
yeah,
he wouldn't know, you know, a Black Dahlia Murder, or, you know, Annotations of an Autopsy or whoever, you know what I mean? He was just like,
yeah.
He's like, I like Napalm Death, I remember that was cool.
Right.
So,
but you guys just re-recorded Gore Metal, which is awesome. And, you know, did you guys make any changes to any of the songs from the originals? What were the audio differences, and were you aiming to make any changes to the music?
Well, we wanted to keep the songs pretty much intact. We didn't really rearrange anything, and there's a couple riffs I played parts maybe like an octave higher just for clarity. In general, we wanted to keep the songs basically the same, and you know, that's one of the reasons why we had Ross come back in and do the vocals again, and our old guitar player Mike Beams played some of his solos and stuff, is because we wanted to, for me, I never liked the first album. I thought it sounded like shit. It just, the production was terrible, the performances weren't good, the drums sounded retarded, and I know that's, a lot of people tell me that's why they like it, and I totally get that, because I love, you know, Venom and the first Sodom EP and stuff, and Hellhammer and stuff that's really sloppy. Like, I'm all about it, so I get it. But for me, it was like that wasn't the way it was supposed to sound, and the way that the re-recording sounds is much closer to how it was supposed to sound then. But I tried really hard to not go overboard. You know, I was doing certain parts, and I was like, oh, I could have harmonized this, and I could do this, and I was like, yeah, don't do that. Just play it the way it was, and don't try to reinvent the wheel, because, you know, I don't know how worthy of respect the source material is, but we try to be respectful of the source material and not, you know, because some people do really like that album. We didn't want to shit all over it, you know.
Yeah.
As much as I probably just did, saying that sucked. But with the reinterpretation, it's like, here's what it sounds like when you can hear the riffs and the drums are on time, and the vocals are on time. It's kind of like a mulligan kind of thing, you know. And, you know, but we did try to keep the songs pretty much intact and kept overdubs and stuff to a minimum, so it wasn't so crazy. It still sounds like gore metal. Well, you know, it kind of goes back to what I was saying. Like, to me, the original generation of death metal, there was only two real topics in death metal up until, like, you know, maybe 91 or whatever. And it was, like, horror, gore, and Satanism. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what Morbid Angel's saying about, that's what Possessed saying about, like, death, obituary, autopsy, all that. Like, Master was kind of on the crossover side with the political thing. Napalm Death was in the crossover, but they both were kind of coming from punk. So it was okay to talk about, you know, conservative shitheads or whatever. And so to me, I always felt like it says what it's about in the name. It's death metal, so you should sing about death. Like, so that's, I never understood, like, you know, when later albums from bands came out, I was like, I don't understand why they're doing this. Like, this is supposed to be death metal. Like, what? And of course, it's all highly subjective. But for me, I'm kind of a purist, and the way that I kind of skate around it is I use a lot of the imagery as like a metaphor. The whole last album, Necrocracy, it's all about American politics and stuff like that, but it's all metaphorical, done in a sort of like zombie, they live kind of theme or whatever, and that way it kind of isn't just me hitting you over the head with like, corporations are bad. And that way if somebody doesn't care about the politics, hopefully they just enjoy the lyrics as entertainment. And then if they really wanted to read more and kind of be like, whoa, what does this actually mean something, they might want to explore it a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fudging the system a little bit. It's just one of those things where I think that for me, I'm never really satisfied. Like, I like all of our records except the first one, but I like the re-recording. But, you know, you always think, oh, we could have done it a little bit better. We could have, you know, maybe we should have done this, or we should have tweaked it in that way. And I think that, you know, I don't believe in perfection. I think that it's just an idea. But while you're chasing this impossible idea, you can stumble upon something pretty cool. And, you know, I just always want to write better songs and you know, just keep saying what I have to say about the genre, because it is something that I value personally, you know. Like, I mean, I was a super huge fan. I mean, I was upset for a week when Death took the drippy blood off their logo. Like, that's how into it I was. Like, my life is ruined. There's no inverted cross in this logo. Like, that's how passionate I was about it, as stupid as that sounds. So, to me, I mean, I feel like, you know, I want to just kind of give my take on it or whatever, and as times change and as my abilities change or my focus changes, that take changes. And, you know, it's fun. Songwriting is kind of like a puzzle or whatever, you know. It's like, how do you fit these parts together in a way that's cool and, you know, catchy but not trite? And so, you know, we're working on it. We're trying. We're doing our best.